Okay, the first step to get on the path to doing our ballistics tables is going to be establishing our ammo temperature muzzle velocity curve. And the very first thing you guys need to do, this does take a bit of field work sometimes, is to get an ammo log set up. Here's an example of what it's going to look like. You're just going to basically keep track of your muzzle velocities and your conditions. Here's one example of a couple shots that were fired. Here's our muzzle velocities. Here's our temperatures in our different conditions. So there's a lot of different things you want to log in there. The more organized you are, the less troubles you're going to have. And after we have a good idea of where we're hitting, as far as velocity is concerned, at any given ammo temperature, then you're going to want to be measuring the ammunition temperature, mind you. Ambient air temperature and the ammo temperature hopefully will be relatively close to each other. But the main criteria for this data set is ammo temperature. So use your infrared thermometer when you're logging this. So use your thermometer, measure your cartridge, chamber it, and fire. Don't let it sit in the chamber too long if your barrel's getting heated up, because that will increase. So allow your barrel a proper time to cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to enter it into the computer, and it'll print you up this. And this is, I got it set up so it's going to be very easy for you guys. And this is an ammo temperature muzzle velocity curve, and this looks like this is for my 338 Lapua. And I can tell because of the velocity here. So at 70 degrees, my muzzle velocity was 2650 with the particular load. And so I enter that data set into the program. I hit enter, and then I open up this chart, and it plots out the adjustment for the rest of the burn rate. Now, the math that this is based on was actually based for the 50 caliber loads, the 50 BMG, for a hard target interdiction course. And I can post the links to the full information there if you want to read more about that and get the original charts, the ammo temperature burn rate curve. But I did this in digital form for you guys, and I set it up a little bit differently so that it's easier for you to custom tailor this to your own loads. Because the relationships between the 50 BMG and other cartridges are actually very similar. The proportion of the 50 BMG is very similar to, it's almost identical proportionally to a 30-06, which is very similar for all practical purposes to most other modern rifle cartridges as far as your burn rate curve is concerned. So this actually works with most small arms. If you're using huge artillery pieces, it's going to be a little different. But so this is what we're going to have. And what we'll notice here on this axis, the y-axis, we have our muzzle velocity in feet per second. Down here is 2550. Up here is 2750. This is about 200 feet per second difference. On the x-axis, we have our temperature ranges, okay? We have 0 degrees Fahrenheit, 50, all the way up to 100, and immediately listed below here will be your projected muzzle velocities based on a standard curve. And it'll probably vary slightly from this curve, but this is a good starting point. If you don't have the time or the money or the patience to go through and drive to all these different conditions and actually test this in the field, this will get you really close. And actually, for the first couple years before I started really getting into the muzzle velocity variation part of the whole science here on this long range shooting, I just based it on this curve because I didn't have adequate data in my ammo log at that point. And this curve actually was like dead on for me. So that's pretty cool. So what you simply do is, this is going to be the first piece of paper you're going to look at when you get out in the field, and you okay, I need to use my my chart. What data set do I use here? So what's my velocity? So when you're setting up your tables, you're going to look, okay, it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit out today. My ammunition, I confirmed the temperature is 42 degrees, so you're just going to go to 40 degrees, maybe a little bit higher. You're going to have to use your eyeball, and you're going to look and you're going to determine your muzzle velocity for that temperature range. Very simple. So then, okay, 2,600 feet a second, you're going to have a column in your ballistic tables, and this is a little bit different than how I'm going to have it set up for you. I'm going to have it more comprehensive for you guys so it's more clear. Mine are a little goofy. This is still kind of a prototype model. This is an old chart of mine. It's like 5 years old. But you're simply going to look up the column, the 2,600 feet a second column or whatever it is, and you're going to look in here and you're just going to go straight to your drop data for that. And like I said before in the video before, if you missed that, is this you're going to have one of these charts for each different air density. Okay, so it's going to be a lot of work getting your chart set up at first, but actually, to be honest, doing the calc forms for a couple years before I did these charts, the calc forms are awesome, but they take a lot of time, and user error is exponentially greater, especially when there's pressure. When you start getting excited in the field and you're trying to do a calc form with a scientific calculator, doing all your different interpolation and all that stuff, it starts to get a little hairy out there, and you do start to make mistakes. Nice thing about this hasty firing solutions table that we're doing here, this high-speed version that's going to be a lot quicker, is it's harder to get set up, but it's easier to do it sitting at a desk than it's going to be under pressure in the field. I guarantee that for you, okay? Here's the other curve. So how do we do this? Well, simply hit the link in the description here that someone's going to post this table for you under this link that I'm going to have, and we'll have this table set up, and I'll show you how to do this on the computer real quick. Okay, this deal is relatively simple, and you're just going to open up the Excel sheet, and it's going to be labeled Sheet 1, and this is our ammunition temperature muzzle velocity calculator. And I have the information down here as to where the original data set came from that was used, the math that was this was built on, and we're going to enter our muzzle velocity for an assumed standard ammunition temperature of 70 degrees. And what that means is that you're going to simply measure your muzzle velocity at a given ammunition temperature. You're going to calculate for 70 degrees, and then you're going to enter that in this one of these slots here, okay? And then once you enter that, all you have to do is hit enter and come down to the charts section on the bottom. Oh, sorry. There's a charts section down here, and the appropriate chart, and we'll get you set up. Now, a little goofy right now, but let me show you how this works. So let's just say, and the easiest way to do this is to actually go out and collect a muzzle velocity in the field with an ammo temperature of 70 degrees. If you can accomplish that, that would be awesome, because then you don't have to do any math at all. Okay? So let's just say, first of all, you go out and you measure a temperature, and it's 2,900 feet a second, 2,971 exactly. Okay? Now there's 4 columns here. Now the ammunition temperature, the burn rate curve is not exactly uniform. For each different velocity range, it changes. It's not a linear relationship. That's why there's 4 columns. So each column has a different set of math it's based on velocity range of cartridges. A real fast cartridge, 3,900 feet a second, or 3,950 and faster, you're going to enter your information into this column. For 2,950, whatever's nearest to 2,950, if your muzzle velocity is close to that, you're going to enter your data here. If you're closer to 2,840, you're going to enter it here, okay? So basically, you're going to pick whichever column your velocity is closest to and enter it in that column, because there's a different set of numbers here. And all these numbers basically are, here's our degrees over here, is, all right, let's say we have a 70 degree ammo temperature, and we'll go to this column, and 2,971 is what I said, right? So we're going to type in 2,971. That's all you have to do, okay? If I go 10 degrees cooler at 60 degrees, we look over here, that's going to be 24 feet per second slower, okay, at that temperature. If it's 10 degrees, if your ammo temperature is all the way at 10 degrees, that's going to be 81 feet per second slower. So this is all. That's all this is, and this is just Microsoft Excel. So if you click on, oh, it automatically did it for me. But if you click on any one of these, it has the. Let me turn this up a little bit so you can see what's going on up here. It has the formula. All it was doing is this cell right here, this subtracted from the number there. So these are the numbers you don't want to mess with. Don't mess with any of these numbers. It'll change the math for you. That's going to be bad. Only enter in this highlighted section. So I measured my muzzle velocity at 2,971 feet per second in the field at an ammunition temperature of 70 degrees. Boom, I put it in there. I hit enter. The little red, these red things are my instructions. It says see chart number 3 because this is the third column. So now I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'll show you where that's at. On the bottom, if you're not familiar with Excel, there's a little tab down here, chart 3. I'm going to click on that and now you'll see it takes you straight to the curve here. That's our projected curve. Oh crap, wrong way. So that's pretty handy, and then all you have to do is hit the old print button up there and you got it. And then I'll show you what to do with this as more data comes in, because you will do field measurements as you go on. Okay, so let's see what we got going on here. And if you need to get back to the original sheet, just go back to sheet 1, okay? So let's clear that. Now it goes back to the original math language going on here, okay? So let's work with some more round numbers here that are a little easier to remember. Let's say you measured at 2,700 feet a second, okay? That's a little bit slower. So you'll notice here, the reason I don't have it lower is because the original data sets that this is based on didn't have data going back that far, but it does stabilize lower here anyways. So it's 2,700 feet a second. The closest one I got out of all these tables is this low one here. So we'll just say, okay, 2,700 feet a second, observed muzzle velocity at 70 degrees, hit enter. All I have to do is go down to see chart 1 on the tab down there, and it'll give me my print off, okay? Let's say, however, though, just for the sake of it could happen, let's say your ammo temperature was 40 degrees, okay? What are you going to do? Let's back up here, go back to the original math. In that case, if it was 40 degrees, it's cooler as denoted in this little box here, right? So all you have to do is you take your muzzle velocity, let's say 2,700 feet a second, but it was measured at 40, if we want, because we have to enter it into this yellow box, right? So 2,700 feet a second, add 57 degrees, 2,757. Okay, so we corrected that for 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty simple. Let's do another one for you. Let's say you have 3,000 feet a second, and you measured it and it was 90 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So 3,000 feet a second, you're going to have to come to the third column because it's nearest to this velocity here. So that's how that works. We're just going to the closest one to whatever velocity we recorded. So this is the 2950 is pretty close to 3,000. However, it wasn't measured at 70 degrees, and we want to type in here. So we have to correct for a 20 degrees increase. So now it's going, a cartridge that's 90 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be 67 feet per second faster than one that was 70. So simply take your 3,000 feet a second and minus 67 degrees. What would that be? I'm basically kind of tired. So whatever that would be, you type that in there. It's going to be like 29 something. I don't know. Okay? And then you type that in there, and then it says see chart 3 below, and it'll give you your ballistic data there. Your ammo, temperature, muzzle velocity curve. So this is pretty slick. So hopefully this deal was not too confusing for you. Basically, as a recap here, measure your velocity in the field at a certain temperature, okay? So if your velocity, whatever your velocity was closest to, here's your velocities in 4 different columns. These are different ones. You're going to just match it up to the closest one here. So if it was 3,000 feet a second, you're going to come, which one's closest to 3,000 feet a second? Well, this one right here, right? Okay. So you're going to go in this column. You're going to enter your number in here. Some number is going to go in here, okay? And let's say, okay, so if it was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, when you measured that velocity, you don't have to adjust for it at all. You just type it in there, hit enter, and then go down to your tab, chart number 3, because that's the column we're in. So we're going to look at chart number 3, and it'll give you the print off, right? However, if it was a different temperature, you're going to see by how much you have to correct for. And let's say it was 40 degrees when you actually measured your velocity. Okay, so you're simply going to say, okay, at 40 degrees, that's going 59 feet a second slower than 70. So whatever this number is that I measured here, if it were 70, it would be 59 degrees faster if it were 70. So take that, whatever you measured here, and just add 59. If you're going this way, you're going to subtract this number and then enter the number in here. So hopefully that's relatively simple. If you guys get confused on this, I will actually not be available for a little while. I'm going to be away from the computer for a while again. But hopefully you guys can kind of help each other out in the comments section there. Some of you guys are probably better at this Excel program than others, and I probably have a little more experience with computers in general. So if you guys are getting tripped up, pretty good community so far on our page. So go ahead and help each other out to the best of your abilities. And if I am around a computer, I will definitely check my messages and try to help out as much as I can. Okay, so after you have your ammo temperature muzzle velocity curve sheet printed off, this is the basic trend you're going to expect to see. Now, what you may measure in the field will most likely deviate, and due to other things like bore conditions, you're not going to be right on this line. You're going to be above it or below it for any given temperature range, okay? So one thing you're going to do is when you're translating the information from your ammo log that you're keeping, I would translate it to this graph, and this is something that you're going to have in your data set. So you're going to have a little book you're going to probably make that you're going to keep out in the field with all your dope in it, and this is going to be the first page of that book, is this curve. And you can scale it down, you can make it any size you want to fit, but you want to make sure you have enough room to write on here. Because what's going to happen is, for example, let's say this is your curve, this is what you expect. Let's say you are actually out in the field, 50 degrees ammo temperature, you check the velocity, and it was actually down here rather than on the line, okay? Due to, who knows, some kind of bore conditions that happened. It was a little bit slower, possibly it was ammunition differences, whatever it was, you're going to want to go ahead and log each data point. So as this book gets more filled up with data, you're going to want to translate that onto this, this graph here so that you can see your actual trend. And what this line is doing, the whole point of the computer program I just showed you, is to give you a head start so you know what to expect generally, because otherwise it would take you thousands and thousands of rounds to even get situated and be able to determine where this line should be in the first place. So let's say you went out again and it was a different temperature, it was 70 degrees, but that day you measured your velocity and it was just a little bit higher, so you're going to log that point. And you're going to keep doing that. You're going to actually enter your information, and what you're going to find is hopefully this line will kind of trend through your data points here. It's kind of a scatter plot with a trend line going through it. Not linear really, but hopefully you can log this information. And what you might see over time is, let's say, right, and you can color code this too. If you're organized, this is a red pen. Let's say this was our virgin barrel, brand new barrel, was all in red for the first, I don't know, 500 rounds, okay? And you start plotting your data like so. And then you go back out and you shoot after it's been fully broken. You got 500 rounds through it, pretty well seasoned bore. And you start to log some more data points. And you notice, oh man, as you fill these in at these different temperatures and different velocities that you're recording, you notice it seems to be trending higher now, okay? And what that's going to do is this is going to give you a basic sense of, because you're going to want to predict what kind of muzzle velocity you're going to have for different bore conditions. So under virgin bore conditions, a very clean new bore, you can expect a velocity trend down here. For something that's broken in the hump of the velocity curve, like we talked about earlier, how the velocity climbs up during the early part of the life sometimes and drops down, well, here you'd be seeing it. We must be in the hump of the muzzle velocity curve, so that might account for that. There might be other factors that you want to keep track of. So that's why a color coding might be a good idea. Okay, now you're into it like 2,000 rounds or whatever, okay? And you start shooting, and you're going to notice, okay, I'm kind of back into the curve again. and it was even cold a few days. You know, you measured a couple at 25 degrees or whatever, and it was right in there. You might get a scatter every once in a while, but what you're looking for is the overall trend. And when you're analyzing these data range like this, you might have a flyer. You might not have something that drastic, or you might. Different things happen with ammunition, but you're going to want to log everything. You don't want to lie to yourself and pretend that the data is doing something it's not. Actually log every point. Even if something seems goofy, log it on here. And you can make a note like, what the heck was that? And question mark or something, and have notes about your suspicions, and you can maybe make an educated judgment on that after a certain point. And let's say, okay, now we're 5,000 rounds into our barrel. And you say, that might be, actually, my 243's got considerably more than that through it. And you start measuring your muzzle velocity trends, and oh man, okay, now our trend line is kind of through here. So if you're going to draw it like that, right? And let's match this with the colors. This one was like this. And a trend line is just going through the majority of it. And that one kind of matches that already. So you're going to see here is that after a while, you might drop down. And this is kind of typical what you might see. And if your velocity trends start to drop down, you could maybe after bore wear, after a certain point, your muzzle velocities will be expected to slightly decrease. So the point of this chart is not only, this is just a starting point, and you're going to measure this in real life, and you're going to translate all the data to this chart so that you can make an intelligent decision and determination of what to expect. So you can go out in the field tomorrow and you can look at this chart and you're like, okay, I've been trending kind of lower than the curve. The current temperature is 80 degrees. My trend line would say approximately, what is this? 2,610 feet a second is what I'm expecting. So you're going to dope out your rifle for the velocity for 2,610 feet per second. So you go to the appropriate column on your chart, or you do your calc form, or you would you'd enter that data, that velocity data, into your ballistic computer or your ballistic software, and this will actually get you on target. A lot of guys end up adjusting their ballistic coefficients unnecessarily. They come up with other systems to try to skirt around something they're not really understanding. And rather than trying to adjust for ballistic coefficients, it's the muzzle velocity will vary, and that can make it look like your ballistic coefficient is changing. This is sometimes you will get different. Sometimes a ballistic coefficient isn't the best representative of your aerodynamic character of your bullet for whatever reason. Things do happen, that's true. But this is kind of the culprit a lot of times. So if you keep track of this, you'd be surprised how accurate like a ballistics program is, or how accurate these charts are going to be. I mean, a lot of times guys are adjusting their ballistic coefficient to suit a goofy muzzle velocity that they were unaware of that changed. They figured they measured it when they did their load development. They must be good, right? Well, they thought wrong. They were mistaken. And if they would have been graphing this out, they might not have had to run through all those hoops. And the thing is, this changes around. It doesn't stay in one place. It's constantly kind of morphing and changing throughout the life of a barrel, throughout the conditions of your bore as far as cleanliness. So log it and then use it to the best of your ability to get you on target with this. And you will be close enough at 1,000 meters, you'll be within an inch or even less than that sometimes. If you do this properly and you make the right determination, the ballistics math that is used and even the ballistic coefficients that are given by the factories and the manufacturers in the books are so very close, if all your other input variables are correct, that you don't have to mess with that. I've never had to mess with the ballistic coefficient that much yet, after I've ensured that all my other ballistic variables, my inputs, going into the software or going into the math problem, were correct. So that's one thing that might be able to help you out a bunch out there. And of course, other things do happen. Sometimes you do need to tweak a ballistic coefficient or some of your other input variables to get the right data, because lots of things can happen. It's a very dynamic, complicated science, but this is kind of getting your foot in the door to a successful firing solution. And I've never really seen anyone do it like this, so hopefully we can start a new trend here and start hitting stuff like on the first shot more often than other guys. That would be cool. Alright, like I said before, hopefully you guys can help each other out as far as the computer part. I know computers are a nightmare for some of you, so just have patience, try to watch it again. It's relatively simple. Follow the little red instructions on there. And if you can't figure it out, you can do it by hand too. It's not that hard. Just, you can go to the source book that I have listed there if you want more information on it. And this should keep you busy for a little while. Start logging your muzzle velocities and your ammo log, keeping track of all your conditions, writing everything down, so that by the time I get back, we'll be able to have this data ready to go, and we will get into external ballistics. And as we tackle each individual topic in external ballistics, we'll go through drop, we'll go through Coriolis, we'll go through spin, and I'll show you how to incorporate those into ballistics tables. And then we'll be ready to start actually doing some shooting. We'll go through all kinds of other great things that you guys are really going to dig. So stay tuned.